When it comes to delivering a well-executed and enjoyable yoga class, you already own your greatest asset. Good news. You just got to know how to use it. And that's what we're going to speak about today. That's what we're going over. This is the third video of my three-part series on using your voice to deliver an amazing yoga class. And this one is all about flow and continuity. I'm Jennifer Sack. I'm a seasoned yogi who loves helping other instructors embody their most aligned and authentic self on and off the mat. Today, we're talking about on the mat, teaching a yoga class, using your voice. If you didn't already catch my prior two videos on the topic, video one was all about um, the mechanics of using your voice, your body to make that a great experience. Video two was all about environmental factors, very important. Today, we're talking about continuity, flow, keeping it going appropriately, using your voice to make the experience better for the class. Now, let me tell you, I've been to a lot of classes, taught a lot of classes, but I'm talking about from the space of being on a mat, receiving a class, even online, listening to classes and watching them on YouTube or what have you, an app that you like, listening to the instructor clearly cue a pose, having the volume be right. All of these things come into play. Having the timing be good, it all affects the yoga class. And there's so many times that I have not returned to a teacher because I just didn't like the way they spoke. And maybe I'm super judgy. Maybe I have a high bar. I don't know. But I have to imagine I'm not the only one that feels this way because I'm not that special. And that it really plays a lot in the part of people returning to you. They like the way you sound. They find that your cueing is simple to follow and it just does something for them. So if you find that people maybe don't return to your classes, you find that you just are a little insecure in this area, or you're just nervous about your next gig, you want to make sure that you're on point, you kind of are brushing up on the topic, stick with me. Let's get into my 5 points today about flow and continuity. And really, the first one is all about sounding like yourself, talking like yourself. Now, I have to admit, I do pick up a lot of cues from other instructors. I'll be in a class, I'll either online or in person, and I'll hear something. And I'll be like, that is a great way to cue that pose or get a visualization to embody the energy or the movement of that pose. And I'll use it again. There is nothing wrong with that, my friends. But do not just copycat everything you hear. Take what you hear and make it your own. Add to it, maybe just change the tone of it, or think of a way that is quite similar that you could say and convey the same thing, but in something that just jives with you, because that's going to allow it to roll off your tongue a whole lot better than if you feel like you're following some script or trying to remember the perfect way that somebody else said something. You got to allow things to roll off your tongue. So the more you teach, the more you get into saying things in a way or describing what you're feeling in a way that is native to you. And people will either align with that, resonate with it, or they'll not really, and it might not make sense to them. And that's not your responsibility. But it is your responsibility to, yeah, be clear, but to sound like you. Sound like the normal way you would say something. If you're a little awkward, sometimes it's okay to be a little awkward as long as your cueing is clear, as long as you're conveying the message, you're okay. If you're a little funny sometimes, a little goofy, allow that part of your personality to shine. If you happen to just be more disciplined, that's okay. Maybe just, tone it down a little so it doesn't feel like a totally disciplined sort of, cracking the whip kind of class. Be aware of your tone, be aware of what your personality is, allow it to shine. And do listen up and pick up things from other teachers that just really hit home for you and make you go, oh yeah, that feels like the right way to cue that so that I can get them to embody that pose in the way that I'm seeing it. Um, it may not land for them, but if it lands for you, it's going to roll off the tongue. You're not going to have to remember a bunch of things. It's just going to come out naturally. Do not be afraid also to share stories. Now, you do need to be afraid of staying in a pose way too long because you got into storytelling mode. And now you've been on the right side of a warrior two for like 2 minutes. Their thighs are dying. And really the class maybe not didn't allow for that much time for it. And then the next side you go to when you're in warrior two, you're in it for like, 20 seconds. That doesn't quite equate. You got to be aware of your timing when you're telling stories. So that means you might, because you might just have a story plan that lends to and adds value to what they're doing or the philosophy or theme of the class. Or you might just ad lib, like something just reminded you of something. Maybe you're really close knit with your crew that you teach to, and you're like, oh my gosh, guess what happened the other day? That's not wrong to do. People love to get to know you. They like to know you better, but one, you don't want to babble on forever. And two, make sure you're still able to cue the class while you're doing it. So maybe you tell a little about your story and then you say, all right, let's move through here before I wrap up that story. Get them to the next pose, work through your flow, land on the next side, and then continue the story on. Be very aware of the flow of the class, of not just rambling on, but allowing yourself to share when it feels appropriate to do so. Um, it just adds value, and they're gonna get to know, like, and love you even more in that way. So sound like you as much as you can. Allow yourself to express yourself naturally. That's my first point when it comes to flow and continuity. People are going to enjoy that. They're going to enjoy sort of being there with you in the class and not just, you know, breathing through some poses. Maybe not everybody likes that. Maybe everybody is there just for the discipline, for quiet. Maybe the class doesn't call for that, but in the right environment, it really does land. My second point is just basically to know when to pause and when to keep going when you speak. So many times I've been in a class and I'm not even completely in the pose and they're already moving on to the next one. And this is something I had to become highly aware of when I was teaching as well, especially when I was teaching to a a class of varying levels. Now, if you're in a class where everybody's kind of at the same level, they have the same sort of ability, and they move in the same pace, it's not such a big deal. Yes, you want to cue and make sure you're cueing along with them so you don't leave them behind, so they don't feel scattered, so they don't end up not catching a full breath in a pose before you moved on. Um, but if you are teaching a class with varying abilities, you have to be very aware of this because it might take some of these students longer to get into the pose. They might have to use hands and knees to stand up, and it takes longer to get to a warrior two than someone who can just swing their leg forward from a downward dog. You know what I mean? There's a lot of different things that happen. People need time, and you don't want to make them feel like they're behind, like they don't have time to enjoy the pose and that they are, failing class because they can't keep up. So be very aware at where people are and how far behind they are so that you're not queuing too quickly. And this is just a rule of thumb. I just say slow it down a little. Just slow it down. They're always like two ticks behind you because I always say it's monkey see, monkey do. Most people are watching you and doing more than they're actually even listening. The listening is almost secondary. So if you're queuing, just be in line with what you're doing, but then allow a couple ticks for them to catch up, to enjoy the moment, to settle in, to fix their alignment. Don't just speed racer through it all and not give them the time. And this goes for flow. I know flow goes and it goes with the breath, but you can elongate it. You can use more space between things. It's okay because here's the thing, especially if you're cueing breathing. Say you go, okay, we're gonna stay in this downward dog for three full breaths. Your three full breaths versus their three full breaths can be very different, but you always want to err on the side of lengthening more time out for them because there might be those students who have a great lung capacity. They're very well versed in elongating their exhalations or what have you. And their three breaths might take a while. It's not going to hurt the people who have more shallow breathing or breathe quicker to have a couple added breaths in there. It's not going to harm them, but it won't be satisfying to someone who does have a longer breath to only be there for one breath. If you said we're going to be here for three breaths, they're kind of wanting to marinate in the moment. They're wanting to move with their three breaths. So always err on the side of more time for the students, especially if you're cueing breathing. and just allowing them to migrate to the pose, to sink into it, to feel it instead of just make it a destination point before they're moving on to the next pose. Always assume they're a little behind so that it adds a little buffer time to it. My third point here when it comes to flow and continuity when you're teaching a yoga class is to be very aware of the momentum and the intensity matching the pace and the moment of the class. This sounds rudimentary. Like when I read it, I was like, duh. Do I even need to say this to them? But I think I do because I have been in classes where the intensity in which they're speaking, the teacher, instructor at the time, does not match what we're doing. So this can err on either side. What if you are just in your warm-ups or your cool downs and they are just super amped still from the maybe it's the cool down and they're super amped from the practice and they're still like just in that pace and that intensity and that volume and you're like, whoa, trying to simmer down here, trying to kind of turn inward, getting ready for that nice juicy shavasana, but they're still amped. It feels off. It's kind of like nerve-wracking. And then vice versa, if it's a more intense part of the class, you need to generate a little extra power. Maybe the music's going a little extra bumping because this is a fast, powerful moment. Don't talk all soft and quiet. Don't be super chill and lax. Amp it up, match the tone of your music, match the tone, the intensity, the movement with your voice. It's going to carry them with you. It's going to energize them. You don't want them falling off. And you don't want them straining to hear you either. And because as they start moving, if this is a more intense class, their breath is going heavier. So they've got some sound to contend with. They've got the breath of everybody else in the room. You need to match. You need to match the intensity and the momentum and the volume that is appropriate for that moment in class. Be very aware of it. And if you are like, yeah, no, this totally makes sense, think back to a time where someone didn't do that and how it felt for you. And you'll never forget that again. My fourth point is to keep things simple when you are speaking. When we're new out there teaching, it's very common that we want to go out there and share everything we know. We're so proud of ourselves for having studied and learned and done it all. We get it so thoroughly. We want to share every stinking tidbit about the pose that we know. It is exhausting as a student to sit there and listen to the teacher ramble on. They're tuning out. They're not even picking up everything you're throwing at them. Stop it. You need to give them some room to just be with themselves, their thoughts, their breath. You can talk the class through, but please add spaces, time for them to just digest and be within. And don't share every stinking thing you know. Because here's the thing, you're going to get plenty of opportunities to share all these things because you teach pretty much the same poses over and over again, maybe in a different order, maybe not every class, but there's a lot of repetition that goes into teaching yoga. So you don't need to throw it all at them at once. You're going to have a lot of opportunity to talk about the benefits or, yada, yada, whatever it is about every single way you can align every little bit and fiber of your body in a pose. Stop it. Keep it simple. Simple. If you want to talk about benefits, if you want to talk about precautions, that's always a good thing, but sprinkle it in lightly. So perhaps, for example, you get on the right side in a warrior two. We'll use that example again. And you get them aligned, always the most important thing, like cue some alignment, where are you going, how to do it correctly. And then maybe you throw in a benefit or two, like what it's good for. And then when you move on and you're now on the left side, maybe that's where you throw in some precautions. I would maybe even err on the side of precautions first because we don't want people to hurt themselves, primarily. Always the biggest thing, right? We don't want people hurting themselves. So maybe that's top priority. Second side might be the benefits, but you see what I'm saying? Don't throw everything at them at once. Keep things simple, keep it enjoyable. You'll have plenty of time to share everything you know about everything. Okay. As the time goes on, as the classes wear on, trust me, you'll get bored otherwise, or you'll just wear yourself out and sound and feel super redundant. All right, my fifth and final tip for keeping flow and continuity going when you are in class is to think about cueing alignment from the ground up. Okay. And maybe you've heard this before, maybe you've learned it and you're like, duh, I do that. Maybe you do it from top to bottom, but I'm going to say from ground up. Do not roll into a pose, talk about the hips, and then talk about where the hands go, and then drop down to your feet and talk about the alignment of, the weight placement in the four corners of the feet or whatnot, and then bounce back up to the shoulders, and then tell them to relax their face. Like this is scattered. You've now taken them all over the place. They're like, whoa, whoa, I don't know what they want from me. Stop. It's not good. And you know what? I actually, when I was very beginning teaching yoga, gosh, so long ago, I guess that was 2012, 11, I forget. Someone actually told me this, who was a student. They brought it up to me and was like, I get a little confused when you cue because we're like here and then we're here and then and I'm like, ah. And it hit home. And I was like, oh, yeah. And from that moment on, I'll tell you, ground up, baby. And the reason why we do it from the ground up is because you want to build a firm, steady foundation first. Foundation first. You want them to feel really grounded and secure there. And once their foundation is set, low level, so we're talking feet or knees or whatever's on the ground, then you can move your way up. And you don't have to hit everything again, not every alignment cue every time, split them up. Most of our poses are done on each side, right? So you have two opportunities to share some alignment. There are some major ones that you're just going to want to say every time, but maybe you halvesies them and share some on the right side and then on the left side. So um, hit them at the highlights. What are the point that's on the ground? What is that doing? What are their feet doing? What are the hips doing? What are the shoulders doing? Those are like the three main main things. And then you can move into once you've hit maybe shoulders, maybe you talk about the extension of the arms or the placement of the hands. Maybe you work up into how they're turning their head, their options for that. Sometimes it's hard to have the head or neck doing a certain thing. So you could say for balance, look at the ground. To work on your balance, you might look straight ahead. To challenge your balance, you might look up to the sky. You can give them their options, but only after you've built the way up, you've started on the ground, hitting just the highlights. Okay. And maybe alternate the highlights between right and left side each time. So you're not just saying the same thing each side, but always building from the ground up and not giving too much instruction is never, and there is too much of a good thing. It's not great. It's overwhelming. We want to keep it simple, cue from the ground up. So, for example, if I were in a triangle pose, I would be like, press your toes down, lift the arches of your feet. I'd say make sure to tuck the bottom hip under, roll that top hip open. And I'd say square your shoulders by drawing the top shoulder back onto the back body. Probably leave it there for the first side. And then I might just end with like, look wherever your neck feels it's comfortable. Next side, I might change that up. I might say, ground through your feet, lift your kneecaps. Okay, so now we've hit a different spot. I might say, tone the low belly, sweep in and up the low back to lift the heart. And then I might say, challenge your balance, look up if the neck allows. Or I might say, spread your fingers wide because we didn't talk about the hands this time. So you can break it up between the sides, just hit the highlights, work from the ground up. So all right, my friends, that wraps up the series. And again, if you didn't watch the other videos, the first one on mechanics of using your voice, the second one on considering all those environmental factors, and there are a lot. And then obviously you got this one. So thanks for being here for that. But catch the others too if you haven't seen them already. And just make sure that you're super aware in your class. And like I said, you already own your greatest asset. You just got to use it. You use it appropriately. You'll get so much more used to this as you go on. The language you use will evolve. The things you say will change. It will become so natural that you won't get hung up on it. If you're insecure now, no, just as you put in the reps, it's just going to become so natural that it'll be a thing of the past worrying about it. And sometimes you'll just have to worry about the environmental factors, but you'll know what to do when it happens. And again, watch my video too if you're worried about that. If you want to make sure that you're living that highest alignment off the mat as well as on the mat, grab my free Align Your Life with Your Teachings PDF. The link is in the description. It's a great checklist to go through and to see kind of a self-assessment. Where are you at? Are you in alignment? Where could you kind of, lock things in a little bit better so that you are embodying that most authentic self. That's going to shine through. It's going to be what your students love from you, and they'll keep coming back for more. That's what you want, right? Okay. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, friends. I'll see you on the next one.